Okay, let's spend some time talking about proper fractions now. And once again, we're going to use long division again with proper fractions, but this time we're going to convert these proper fractions to decimal numbers. And the way to do that is by doing long division. So once again, we already have the fractions, how it looks as a division sentence, and how it looks when you're using long division. We want to remember that, just like when we were doing improper fractions. But now let's go ahead and jump in and see how to convert this fraction to a decimal. Well, first this says 3 divided by 4. So 3 divided by 4. Or we can try to see how many times 4 goes into 3. Well, already we know that 4 can't go into 3. So what you want to do here, and I'm going to extend my line a little bit, but I'm going to add a decimal, and if I add a decimal here, I have to add a decimal vertically directly on top of it, and I'm going to put a 0 here. So now this says 30. This is 30. Okay, and I want to see how many times 4 can go into 30. Okay, and just to double check, we know that 4 times 0 is equal to 0. And 4 times 1 is equal to 4. So we know that 4 can go into 3 0 times. So really, we could put a 0 here. We already know that. But let's keep going. We want to see how many times 4 can go into 30 now. Okay? So 4 times 2 is 8. 4 times 3 is 12. 4 times 4 is 16. 4 times 5 is 20. 4 times 6 is 24. And 4 times 7 is 28. Well, let's do one more. 4 times 8, which makes what? 32. All right, so 32 is too big. We're going to go with 4 times 7. And now that we know that 4 times 7, so 4 times 7 makes 28. Let's go ahead and subtract. 30 minus 28 is 2. We know that 4 can't go into 2, so what we're going to do now, we're going to add another 0 and bring that down. So now we want to see how many times 4 goes into 20. But we already know that 4 goes into 20 5 times. So 4 times 5, we put the 5 above that 0. 4 times 5 is 20. And when we subtract, we're going to do 20 minus 20, which is 0. So 3/4, or 3 divided by 4 as a decimal, is really 0 and 75 hundredths. Okay? 3/4 is equal to 0 and 75 hundredths. Okay? Number 2. Once again, we're going to be using long division to turn 5/8 into a decimal. Well, 5/8 really means 5 divided by 8. And we know that if we want to perform long division, it's going to be how many times does 8 go into 5? Right? Well, let's see. 8 times 0 is 0. 8 times 1 is 8. 8 is too big. So we already know that 8 doesn't go into 5. And if we wanted to, we could say that 8 goes into 5 0 times. But we're going to add a decimal. That means we're going to put a decimal right above it. And then we're going to place a 0 after that decimal. Okay? And if we want, we can go ahead and put the 0 here. We know that 8 goes into 5 0 times, but now we want to see how many times 8 goes into 50. So let's go ahead and jump to 8 times 4. 8 times 4 is 32. 8 times 5 is 40. 8 times 6 is 48. 8 times 7 is 56. 56 is too big, so we want to use 8 times 6. 8 times 6 is 48. Now we're going to do 50 minus 48, which is 2. We place the 2 there. Now we're going to add another 0, and we're going to bring that 0 down. So that's going to become, how many times does 8 go into 20? Well, we see that 8 goes into 20. Let's see, how many times does 8 go into 20 without going over 20? We don't have that one up here, so we need to go back and write our multiplication facts out. We skipped over 2 and 3, so let's see. 8 times 2 is 16. 8 times 3 is 24. So 8 goes into 20. Oops. 2 times. Let me use my highlighter. 8 goes into 20 2 times. So we're going to put a 2 here. And 8 times 2 is 16. Now we're going to subtract. 20 minus 16 is 4. 8 doesn't go into 4. So above here, I need to stretch my line out. I'm going to have to add another 0 and drop that 0 down. And now this becomes, how many times does 8 go into 40? And we have that one right here. We know that 8 goes into 40 5 times. So now I'm going to do 8 times 5, which is 40. We're going to subtract. 40 minus 40 is 0. So now I know, now that I have my final answer up top, I know that 5/8 or 5 divided by 8 is really equal to 0 and 625 thousandths. Final answer. Number 3. Number 3 says 2/3, but it also says 2 divided by 3. And we know if we wanted to use long division, we would really be asking ourselves, how many times does 3 go into 2? Oops. 3 goes into 2. How many times does 3 go into 2? Well, let's start off with 3 times 0 is 0. 3 times 1 is 3. We know that 3 can't go into 2, so we're going to add a decimal. We're going to put a decimal here. We're going to put our 0 out in front. And we're going to add this first 0 here. Okay? Now, we want to see how many times 3 goes into 20, so let's keep going. 3 times 2 is 6. 3 times 3 is 9. Let's see. 3 times 4 is 12. 3 times 5 is 15. 3, let's make that look like a 15. 3 times 6 is 18. 3 times 7 is 21. 21 is too big, so we know we're going to stick with 3 times 6. 3 times 6 is 18. 20 minus 18 is 2. So now we know that 3 can't go into 2. We're going to have to add a 0 and bring that down. So now, once again, we want to see how many times 3 goes into 20. But we just did that. We already know that 3 goes into 20 6 times. So 3 times 6 is 18. 18 from 20 is 2. And now we know that, and once again, we start to see a pattern here. We know that 3 can't go into 2, so we have to add another 0 and bring that down. That's going to make that 20. But we see a pattern here. We know that 3 goes into 20 how many times? 6 times. Okay, 3 times 6 is 18. And when we subtract, we're going to get 2 again. So we kind of know, we see here that this is going to keep repeating. We're going to keep getting the same thing over and over. So this decimal is a special type of decimal. This fraction reduced as a decimal is written as 0 and 666 thousandths, but the 6 keep on repeating. So we use a bar to represent repetition in mathematics. All right, so when you see that there's a pattern and this pattern continues to repeat, you put the bar, you use the bar to represent which part of the decimal is repeating. And since the 6s is repeating, we put a bar over all of the 6s. And I didn't write this correctly. This should say 2/3, or 2 divided by 3 is equal to. All right, so number 4. Number 4 is written as 14 divided by 24. Well, we should recognize that first, before we do anything here, that this fraction can be reduced. So if we want to reduce this, I know 14 and 24 both share a common factor of what? Well, we could do 2. We could divide both of them by 2 because all even numbers divide by 2. That's going to give us 7 over what? 12. 7 divided by 12, they don't have any common factors, so that is simplified. So we could write this as 7 divided by 12. But then if we want to do long division, because remember we're converting this to a decimal, we want to see how many times 12 goes into 7. We should know that 12 doesn't go into 7. 12 times 0 is 0. Okay, and then we do 12 times 1, but that's 12. So we already know that 12 is not going to go into 7. So we're going to add a decimal, put our decimal there. We're even going to put our 0 out in front. And we're going to add another 0 right here. So now we want to see how many times 12 goes into 70. We got to keep going. So 12 times 2, that's 24. 12 times 3 is 36. And the reason we're going through our multiplication facts, this helps reinforce our times tables. It's just good practice. Okay, so 12 times 4 is 48. 12 times 5 is 60. 12 times 6 is 72. 72 is too big, so we're going to use 12 times 5. 12 times 5 makes 60. We can go ahead and subtract. 70 minus 60 is 10. We know that 12 can't go into 10, so what are we going to do? We're going to add a 0 and drop it down. So now we want to see how many times 12 goes into 100. We got to keep going. So we do 12 times 7, that's what? 84. 12 times 8 is what? 96. And then we have 12 times 9, which is 108. Well, 108 is too big, so for this one we're going to use 12 times 8. And we know now that we've written it out that 12 times 8 is 96. We'll go ahead and subtract. 100 minus 96 is 4. We know that 12 can't go into 4, so we got to do what? Add another 0. So we're going to extend our line. We're going to add another 0, bring that bad boy down. And now we want to see how many times 12 goes into 40. We've already written our multiplication fact, so we see that 12 goes into 40 3 times. And that's going to give us, so 12 goes into 40 3 times. That's going to give us 36. When we subtract, we're going to get what again? 4. But now we know that 12 can't go into 4, so we got to add another 0, bring that down. That becomes 40. And once again, we start to see a pattern here because 12 goes into 40 3 times. We're going to get 36. And when we subtract, we're going to get 4. And we know that this is going to keep repeating. So the number that's repeating here is the 3. So when we rewrite this, we're going to say 14 divided by 24 reduces to 7 divided by 12, which as a decimal is 0. And 583 thousandths with the 3, just the 3 repeating. The 3 is the only thing that's repeating, so we keep our line over our 3. And that, ladies and gentlemen, will conclude changing a proper fraction to a decimal.